Hey everyone, I got some real pretty rice paper that I'm going to do some decoupage and resin and glass art with. Becky from our Facebook group has generously shared some beautiful artwork that she's done on rice paper, and I thought we would try. So many people had questions about it, so follow along. So I picked up this rice paper on Amazon. It came with 8 different prints. I chose 2 prints to do. I also picked up 2 canvases from Hobby Lobby when I was up there. So the prints are actually 5.5 by 8 and the canvases are 5 by 7. So the prints are a little bit bigger than the canvases. So I figured these would be easy to do because they will overlap the sides a little bit. So besides unpackaging the canvases, didn't have anything to do to prepare them because it already said that they were double coated with gesso. So I didn't have to put any paint or anything else on them at this point. And then as you'll see sitting that I just picked up is water brushes. So these were actually from the Dollar Tree. You got 2 of them for $1.25. And it has a reservoir and you just fill it with water, and it has a little brush, and when you tip it upright the water comes out. Another great place to find rice paper is decoupagenapkins.com. They have thousands of options in all sizes and themes. I will leave a link in the description below and also a 10% off discount code for any purchase over $30. They do also have the water brushes on Amazon, so if you can't find them at the Dollar Tree or at the craft store, I will leave a link in the description. So I just filled it with water. I put some parchment paper under the area that I was going to work in, and I got my little cutouts out. And what I did was I went all along the edges with the water, and be real generous with it. It'll make it easier to break it apart. And the reason you're supposed to pull it apart this way instead of cutting it is the little fibers will show, and it's easier to hide the fibers in the canvas when you paint than if you were to cut a straight line. If you were to cut a straight line when you go to paint to blend it into the canvas, you're going to be able to see it. So I just went along the edges with the water brush, and this really is a little bit tedious. I watched some videos of them doing it, and it looked so easy when they were doing it, but I decided I just needed more water, so I was really generous with the amount of water that I put on it. And just be very careful when you're tearing it, and then go along the edges with the white. You want to get all of the white off of there, and you'll see like little fibers sticking out, and that's okay, but just pull the white fibers off so that they're less visible. So I just continued around all the edges until all of the white was gone. And you can see me kind of wrinkling up the paper as I'm going. This paper is really very forgiving. So unlike a napkin, if you were doing it like this with a napkin and wrinkling it up like that, it might not be as forgiving as this rice paper is. So once I was done with that, I put it over top of the canvas just to see how it would fit. And the bottom totally covers that bottom lip. The top, there will be a little bit of the canvas exposed, and on the sides, it just overlaps it a tiny bit. So I'm going to have to do some blending with paint. So next I got some different paints out that I thought might match the colors along the edges. And this is not the final paint that you're going to be putting on, so this isn't as important as after you Mod Podge, put the rice paper on and then do the final coat of paint. So as you guys all know, I am not a painter. So if I can do this, you guys can do this. So I just tried to kind of match the colors just along the edges a little bit so that when I went to do the final blending at the very end, it would make it so much easier to do. And I just continued around all of the edges, coloring it all in. I really didn't need to put any on top because the entire piece of rice paper is covering the top. So Becky on our Facebook group, who was generous enough to share the pictures of the rice paper that she decorated with glass and resin, does hers so that it's a little bit smaller than the canvas, and she has to blend the paint around the perimeter. So this is a little bit easier done this way, but the next video that I'll do, I'm going to try to do it that way, and I'm going to try to get some tips from Becky because she did a really nice job. So next I plugged my heat gun in and went around and dried all the paint, because you cannot move on to the next step until the paint is totally dry. And of course you can just let it dry on its own, but I really wanted to get on to the next step. So the next thing I did was get out the Mod Podge. This is full strength Mod Podge, and this happens to be the gloss, but I don't really feel like it makes a difference whether it's matte or gloss, because we're going to be putting resin over it, which is going to turn anything that's matte into a gloss finish. So I would say anything that you have. So I just went ahead and I painted it on, and it's really important that it's dry, your paint, or else you're going to lift it up and get it all over the canvas. I guess it wouldn't matter if some paint got on the canvas. I think I may have actually got a little bit on there, but it's in your best interest for it to be dry. So you need a really good coat of Mod Podge. Do it on the top and on the sides, and then I took a water bottle and I squirted the back of the rice paper and just gently laid it down, and gosh, it went down wrinkle free. And I just took my fingers and kind of smoothed it down into the Mod Podge on the very top first, and then I went all along all the edges and the sides, just being real careful with it and pushing down those fibers that were there, and pulling some off too. If there was extra white fibers on there, you can see them. I tried to pull them off as best I could, and went over the edges again with the Mod Podge, and just kind of took my time and pushed everything down. And once I thought everything was pushed down real well, I went and I put a coat of Mod Podge on top of that, and I was pretty generous with it, and I went over the sides and all the little fibers and just gave it a really good coat. Then this has to be completely dry before you can move on to the next step, and I did not blow dry it dry. I just let it dry on its own for about an hour and a half. And then when that was completely dry, I started again with the paint. And what I do with my paint, whatever I have left on the paper plate, I take it and I stick it in a baggie and I seal it. A lot of times I'll do that with the paintbrush too, and it'll stay nice and wet, and I'll be able to reuse it instead of wasting a bunch of paint. So again, I am not a painter, but I tried to blend as best as I could, and honestly, with it being on the side like this, I don't think it matters as much. I think if you're doing it on the top, it would make a difference, but on the sides, I just tried to match some of the colors as best I could and make it so that it didn't look terrible. And just went around all the edges over top of the fibers, and you'll notice that the fibers completely disappear too when you do that. So in combination with the Mod Podge that I had put on before. So again, when it's perfectly dry, about an hour and a half later, came back and just started trying to blend colors along the edge. The entire bottom of it was covered with the rice paper, so I didn't have to do anything there. And I apologize, I'm off camera here. And I just continued around the perimeter and did the best that I could with it. And then again, I took it and used the heat gun to dry the edges. And you really need to make sure that this paint is dried this time, because now we're going to put the final coat of Mod Podge on. And if any of the Mod Podge picks up the paint, you'll get it all over the front of your picture, and you really don't want any of the paint on the front of your picture. Whereas the first time, if a little bit of paint got on the front of the canvas, it didn't make a difference because the rice paper was going to cover it up. But with this, it really does make a difference. And then again, I shake the Mod Podge up really well, and I go ahead and I put another coat of Mod Podge on it, a nice coat of Mod Podge covering the front and covering the sides really well. And then this is going to have to dry for, say, an hour and a half, and it has to, of course, be completely dry before you put any resin on top of it. So this is the second picture that I chose to do, and I'm just going to fast forward through this, but I will repeat the steps. So using the water brush again, I go all along the edges, removing all the white and pulling the white fibers off. And then I take my paint and I paint along the edges, the colors that are going to be on the edges of the rice paper. I use my dryer to dry the paint. Then I paint a really good coat of Mod Podge on top of the canvas. Make sure you also put the Mod Podge along the sides. And I squirt the back of the rice paper with water. And I carefully place the rice paper on top of the canvas and smooth all along the edges. And then I take Mod Podge and put a good coat of Mod Podge all over the top and the sides. I let that completely dry for about an hour and a half, and then I come back with my paint again, and I try to put paint along the edges that blends with what is on the side. And this really isn't that difficult because the bottom is totally covered with the rice paper, the top is partially covered, and the sides, it goes down the side a tiny bit. So this isn't as important as if you were having to paint on top of the rice paper on the top of the canvas. This is just the sides. So once I've painted that, then again I take it and I dry it completely with the heat gun. And once that's completely dry, I shake up my Mod Podge again and give it a good coat along the top and along the sides. And I let this dry for an hour and a half. Remember, it has to be completely dry before you can put the resin on it. So next I'm getting my glass ready, and what I'm using is Ashland Decorative Filler, the reflective crushed glass, and this has all been colored with various colors over the years. Some of it at different holidays they'll actually sell it in different colors, so some of it had been pre-dyed before I purchased it, and some of it I dyed myself. And this, I'm adding some of the Bombay India ink black to the green just to make it a little darker, to kind of match that Christmas trees that's by the mouse. And as you can see, that black goes a long way and it's just too dark. So what I end up doing is adding more of the green to it to kind of tone it down a little bit, and I think that works pretty well. So as you'll see, I have way more glass than I will need to put on this project, especially that green there. But this is why it's a good idea, like if you only have a pinch of this or a pinch of that as far as different colored glass, don't toss it. Put it in a little tiny container and save it, because this is where it would really come in handy, because you only need a small amount for the different areas of this project. So next they're ready for the resin. The resin I'm using for this project is super clear resin. It's a tabletop epoxy, a coating resin. The only thing negative that I have to say about it is that the smell is really strong. But it is VOC free, made in the USA, certified food grade, and a very nice coating resin. I honestly can say it is comparable to art resin, but the super clear is half the price. So here I am preparing my canvases for resin by putting them up on cups. And you know, the one thing I forgot to do, I never taped the back of them. So they're going to have drips on the back. I'll try to wipe the drips off as we go, but inevitably there'll be drips on the back. So anyway, they're up on the cups. I mix up my resin, And being a tabletop or coating resin, it is a very, very thick resin, creates a lot of bubbles. But the great thing about putting your resin on canvas is the bubbles seem to dissipate quite quickly, and you can get rid of the rest of them with a heat gun or a kitchen torch. Coating resins do not do well in a bubble removal machine because they're so thick it actually creates more bubbles. And here you can see all the bubbles in the resin. And there are quite a few, but they all disappear. And I know it looks like I'm mixing it super fast. I just have this sped way up. And the easiest way to put resin on canvas is if you don't have any glass on it first, if you can avoid it. And I just take it and I spread it out with my hand around the sides and over the edges. Honestly, it's the easiest way. And I do that with both of the canvases, and once I have them all on, I end up taking my gloves off because my gloves are just a mess. And I think I ended up putting about 1.5 ounces on each of them because I think I made 4 ounces, and I have at least a half an ounce, if not a whole ounce left. So I took my gloves off, I hit it with the kitchen torch to get rid of the bubbles, and I just started sprinkling the glass on. And I tried to match the colors, green for the scarf and red for the other scarf, black for the hat. And this Ashland decorative filler has one side is reflective, and it has the mirrored side, and you'll see me in a minute taking my toothpicks and flipping over some of them so that the reflective side is up. That's the only thing that was kind of a pain about it. Put some pink glass in the little mouse's ears and green on his scarf and red on the other scarf, and I sprinkled some up in the sky over the mouse and on the moon and just kind of decorated as much as I thought it needed. I was just thinking it would have been cute to get some little tiny buttons and put them down the snowman, and maybe even some teeny tiny buttons for his eyes or whatnot. I could have added, some more detail in those areas. And I sprinkled a couple little pieces of orange glass on his nose, but you could even cut a piece of orange glass and use it for his nose. I mean, there's all different things you could add. You could add jewels to the little stars above the snowman. There's just so many different things that you could do with this. When I'm done with the project, I always come back about every 15 minutes to check for glass placement, to check for sediment, get it out with a toothpick, to check for bubbles and retorch if necessary. It's in your best interest to have it on a flat, level surface and to cover your project with a dust cover to prevent any more dust or anything from flying into it. This resin is a coating resin, a 1-to-1 ratio resin that you mix slowly in a cup like most other resins. It cures best at temperatures between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. All resins are different. You need to read the directions for the resin that you are using. And you can see me here with my toothpick. I'm trying to flip over the little pieces of glass. Here I have 2 toothpicks. And then here at the very end, you'll see me going around the bottom with a popsicle stick trying to knock the drips off. And really, you have to come back every 15 minutes and do that. It's in your best interest to put the tape on the back of it, and then you can just easily pull the tape off the next morning and remove the drips. I just totally forgot about it. Hey everyone. So I think these were so pretty. Becky from our Facebook page was generous enough to share some beautiful pictures of some rice paper projects that she had done, and everybody was asking so many questions and we're so in love with them and was asking her if she did a video. So I decided to go ahead and try it and do a video. So these actually covered the entire front, so I didn't have to worry about blending any colors there. I did try to put some colors on the side, and I'm going to show you up close. So you cannot see those fibers at all. Whoops, where it starts and ends. So I thought next time, I guess she said that the ones that she does, she makes them a little bit smaller than the canvas. So she has to actually put a border or somehow blend it in to the canvas.
So I'm going to try that next time. I got some bigger ones. These are really vibrant colors. So these are not quite as bright. These are kind of vintage looking, but I have a whole bunch of pretty ones. And they're from, they're mulberry rice paper from Craft Creatively. And on Amazon, I believe that's where she said she gets some of her stuff from, but I will put a link in the description. So I thought these were super pretty vintage looking ones, the Santa and the birds and the Christmas tree. And I'll try to get a canvas that's a little bit bigger and see if I can't blend along the edges. I'll get some tips from Becky because she did such a good job.
I will also leave a link under the description for decoupage.com. They have a beautiful selection of rice paper, and I will also leave a 10% discount code that you can use for anything over $30.
But all in all, I mean, I thought it was fairly easy to do. The main thing was letting it dry between the, after the Mod Podge application, which you did twice. And I didn't think that was bad. And then putting the resin on, it was nice to be, I think she said she puts the glass on first and then resins. But to me, it seems like it's easier doing the resin first and then sprinkling the glass on. Now, this would be one that you could do with just Mod Podge also. You could, you could put your layer of Mod Podge on, sprinkle your glass on, and then put some clear Mod Podge, but you'd have to be real careful, half-strength Mod Podge, but you'd have to be really careful putting the Mod Podge on that you didn't knock the glass off. So I don't think it would be as shiny as this with the resin, but it still would be pretty if you don't want, if you don't like to use resin. So anyway, thank you, Becky, for sharing your rice paper projects with us. And I think these turned out nice, and I'm going to try get some tips from her and try to do some larger ones. And after that, I would like to do some napkins also. I've done the Mod Podge napkins, put glass on it before. I have an old video with a Christmas tree on it, and I think some red trucks was on the napkins. But I was going to try another one and just see how much harder the napkin is to work with than the rice paper, because this rice paper was super easy to work with. I mean, whatever wrinkles were in there came right out. It was easy to just put right on top of the canvas. Just super, super easy to work with, whereas I think napkins might be a little bit more difficult. So we'll see. So keep watching if you want to see some more rice paper and napkin decoupage and then resined with glass. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something new. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, share, consider subscribing, and check out our Facebook group. And I hope you all have a great day. Thanks for watching.